Okay, welcome back everybody to Twin Hammer. We have some special guests who have both featured in recent battle reports on the channel. We have George, Armor, and Vivek Ramesh on the channel here again today to lend us their experience and their know-how, and for all three of us to come through and just experience this new approved ops pack, go through it, and hopefully make sense of it for everybody so that we can approach this new era of Kill Team in a very clear and easy to remember way. So we all thought that we'd come together and talk about the game sequence first. It's relatively unchanged from before, but there are some really changes to go over. So we thought we'd just go over the entire game sequence holistically, just in case we don't miss out anything. So we're going to go all the way from setting up the battle to playing the battle and the new changes that are coming in this new approved ops pack. So George, if you want to take us through just getting started and your initial thoughts on how to set up the battle and any changes that you've noticed.
Sure. Yes, I think this would be useful for beginner players and also for more experienced players as well, because it's very similar to how the old approved ops were, but there's like a few key differences that will take a few games to get used to. So the first of which are the new initiative system, which is the big gimmick of this set. So it begins, that's the first thing you do. So both players will roll off, and the player who wins the roll off gets to decide who has the initiative. And the person with initiative in the setup phase, they choose the side of the board they want to be on. And the person who does not have initiative gets the reroll card, which they can use in a later turning point, which is a key difference. So in terms of kind of like decision making, some of the new maps, which I'm sure you'll go through later, Thomas, some of them can have advantages for both sides depending on what team you're playing. So there is some advantage still for picking the side, but it's also a pretty big advantage. Like the power of the reroll initiative is really strong for a lot of teams. So there is some important choices that players have to make just from the get-go with the first roll of the game.
So if you don't get choice of side, you have then a reroll on any of the future initiative rolls to use for the rest of the game. Can we correctly say that?
Only for one roll, though.
Yeah, only for one roll, yep.
Exactly, yeah. To be used at any point in turning point 2, 3, or 4 in any of
even
those
one.
initiatives.
Yeah, you can
Number
use
one.
it.
Very true.
So yeah, then to go forwards, so number 2 is the select operatives, that's exactly the same. Number 3, the setup operatives, that's exactly the same as well.
Okay, so yeah, so the main difference we see early on is in that you're getting that reroll initiative card if you don't get choice of side. So from then on, you're just going to select your operatives, your equipment. You do get 2 CP right after choosing your equipment, which is something that maybe will affect some sort of order. So it's worth noting. And then you're going to select your tac op. Then you alternate setting up equipment and then your thirds of kill teams. And then I think we can go into the next sequence, guys. What do you think?
Yep, let's keep it moving.
Okay, so now we're going to be into the play the battle sequence here. So do you want to take it from here, George, continuing any new changes?
Sure. So after both players have deployed, how the first turn is determined is slightly different from the last set of rules. So instead of the scouting phase, it's now just a roll off. So both players roll off 1d6, and the person who didn't have initiative breaks any ties, and the winner of the roll-off, they get to choose who goes first or second in the first turning point, and the loser of the roll-off gets the new +1 cards to their initiative that they can use in future roll-offs.
Very cool. And Vivek, in your opinion, what would be now without a scouting step to kind of reposition, and I know you were doing this extremely well with the Starstorm Duelist in Corsairs on that legendary run you had, now without that extra 3 inches to start, what would be a reason someone would want to take first turn? Would there be one?
To go first in first turn?
Yes.
I mean, the big ones are your opponent has made a blunder and has left something that you can do immediately that they can fix if they go first. You want to take it then? Other than that, I mean, no, because you really want the tiebreak in TP2 way more anyway. So it's really just is there a blunder on the field, or is there something that you need to go do before your opponent can do something. Actually, practical example, Deathwatch can guard on open. If there's like a key piece that you need to stage and it's a move dash and you know you're going to get caught out in the open in between that, like you're not going to be able to go safely, you might want to go first to go do that staging, knowing your opponent might just go on guard and mess up your entire game plan.
That's really funny you say that, Vivek. That's exactly what I did yesterday. I was playing Troy's Deathwatch. I won the roll off. I decided to go first because he had the marksman, and I knew I needed to move dash somewhere to stage properly.
Exactly, yeah.
And the other small advantage as well, this is kind of like quite niche, but I think it might be as players kind of get more used to the initiative system. If you go first on turning point 1, it means your opponent breaks any ties on turning point 2. So you have a slightly more chance of losing the roll off for turning point 2 and getting the +2 card as well. So that might be a reason to go first as well if you want to try to play for the +2 card.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So you can in wanting to go maybe first in turn 3, you go first in turn 1 to give you an increased chance of getting the +2 card on turn 2. That is extremely interesting.
And the other quite interesting thing you can do as well is you can kind of force that as well. So say if you were lucky enough to get the reroll card as well, you could even reroll to try to lose initiative turning point 1, or lose initiative, or use the +1 the +1/-1 to minus your initiative in turning point 2, so that you get the +2 card. So you're basically trading your +1 card for your +2 card in turning point 3,
which is a big trade.
Yeah, so you can't emphasize how important the new initiative system is. Like the jury's still out on it for me. Like I thought I was quite negative going into it, but the more I play with it, the more interesting it actually kind of is. There's a lot of like interesting decisions that can be made, which are not quite intuitive, and that like they will take a few games for players to get used to. What was I going to say? The other thing as well. What was I going to say? Something to do with initiative, but it'll come back to me at some point.
So it's very interesting because this is now, I would say it feels like an improvement. And I know from Kill Team, from the previous edition of Kill Team into now this edition that we're in, now we're going into the second approved op pack. It felt like they made a lot of fixes, quality of life improvements in this new edition. And now with this pack, this initiative system feels like another quality of life improvement on an area of the game that could feel like you just straight up lost. Like if you lost the roll, it's just a straight up negative. Now with this initiative system, it gives us that little bit extra play to kind of mitigate just that feel bad. And I think they've done a great job, especially with the earlier edition giving us that extra CP if we lose initiative. Now this gives us even something else to make us feel better if we lose a roll off, which is a nice quality of life improvement. And I guess that's one thing to take a note of is as we're going through, the player that loses the roll off gains they gain a reroll on the picking of sides. They gain +1 card if they lose in turn 1,
or
+2 if they, or +1 -1, thank you. +2 -2 for turn 2, +3 -3 for turn 3, and
nothing in 4.
Nothing, obviously. So, because there's no turn 5, so that's why there's not one in turn 4. But yeah, so that's an easy way to remember, correct, guys?
So the other big thing as well is the removal of the scouting phase. Like you kind of touched upon it earlier with the removal of the reposition, but also a lot of teams were relying on the equipment option for scouting as well. So the equipment becomes a lot more valuable. So what was your 5th choice? You really have to you can't take everything now. So like as a Blazer Kane player, I basically had the choice of 3 faction equipments and two flex spots. Which is really good. Yeah. So for some maps like the old Gallo Dark ones where there's no scattered terrain on the board, unlike the new Tomb Worlds, there's like a real kind of barricade tax now as well. So that's going to be quite interesting to see how certain teams are affected by that as well.
I mistakenly called it the equip phase many times in a game, already having decided that I was going to take equip as the scouting option. So
I took scouting option 2 exactly 3 times in all of the games I played, and I took those 3 times to do exactly win. I wanted to just win the rock paper scissors and make my opponent go first.
Yeah, like I was playing more reposition. I was doing what you were doing, Vivek. It's really like reposition was really strong because you can, especially if you out activate them as well. It just like kind of like having that extra 3 inches. It kind of creates like a kind of zone of space where you could kind of like stop your opponent from staging at certain spots.
Well, for like any shooting elf, it's like a 15-inch bubble almost. You know. where it's like, okay, I've moved up 3 inches up the board. I now have 10 inches of movement and a 2-inch threat range. Like, it's huge.
Yeah, so I think the turn 1 setup is going to be really interesting now as well, because it's like so the teams that do have the scouting phase movement, like Battle Clades, Brood Brothers,
Felgor.
Chaos Cord, Felgor, like they have quite an advantage now, which is should be quite cool to see. And then I think keeping a track of which player has which initiative cards is going to be really important as well, because it's going to determine how much you can kind of push in Turning Point 2.
Yeah, because you know you're not going to be able to really aggressively stage at the end of TP2 if your opponent is sitting on the reroll the 1, +1, and the +2.
Yeah, even just a reroll and +1 is super strong as well. Like, you've got a really good chance of
Like,
getting
if they've got reroll and +1 and they have the advantage on the tiebreak, the math is nuts.
It's good, yeah.
Actually, that's one quick question. For the rerolls and the adding and subtracting, is there an order of operations to it? Like, do I have to add and subtract first, or can I, like, roll initiative, use my reroll, and then add to my reroll?
So if you reroll, you lose any additions, any modifications you've done to it.
Yeah, so what I'm asking is, can you reroll first and then add?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
And any team with faction equipment have to use it before any of the initiative cards are played as well. So.
Okay, that's cool. One more question. Let's just say I have the +1, you have the +2, you have initiative. What's the order of who has to declare?
I think you both keep going until you both pass, I think.
Who starts?
Starting with the player that lost the roll off, each player alternates either using an initiative card to alter the result of the roll or passing until they both pass in succession.
That's awesome.
So like realistically, like if you lose the roll, like you will always get a chance to play your card, I think.
So then you will know it's like, okay, like I rolled a 4, you rolled a 5, but you have the +2 and I'm holding a +1. I know it's like, okay, I can add 1, and then you're just gonna add 2, so there's no point in adding 1 here.
Yeah.
Unless I wanted to make you use your +2 card, be like, trade for my +1.
It gets interesting as well though, because like the cards kind of get distributed quite a lot between the players. So even if you are sitting on like a +3 or a +1 and a +3, your opponent could be sitting on a +2, and they've still got like a decent chance of winning initiative as well. So it's not a given.
It's so cool that you can combine them all together too. Be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and add 5 to my initiative roll. Like you're going into TP4, your opponent has no cards, and you're holding +5. You're like, oh yeah, I get initiative no matter what.
Unless you're playing against Blaziken, but that's another story. The D3 is so strong.
Oh right, they can add D3, right? Yeah. They've got. Would you have to do that before we get into using the cards?
Yep.
Oh, then I guess I go into it knowing whether or not it would be possible at least.
Yep, and then if you re-roll, you lose a D3 as well. That's how I read it at least. But
it says all modifications. That's a modification.
Yeah.
So one thing we just wanted to clarify as well, if you do lose the roll off, including if like your opponent uses their cards to manipulate going first, do you then get the extra CP for being the one who doesn't go first?
Yes, there was a bit of confusion about that. So the extra CP from Turning Point 2 onwards is in the core rules. It's page 37 if you want to take a look.
That has not been modified with the new approved ops pack. Perfect.
No.
And how many CP extra do you get for those who aren't familiar?
Just one extra. Yep.
Just one. Just the one.
Okay, perfect. So if you're both at 3 CP to start the turn and your opponent does all their cards to go first, they would go up to 4 CP that turn and you would go up to 5 CP because you have the +1 for just starting the turn, both of you, but you get the extra +1 because you do not go first.
Correct, yeah.
Perfect. Just wanted to clarify that for the listeners because, again, there was some confusion. And because it's not overtly listed.
Another neat reason to modify initiative to win, to make your opponent go first, to get an extra CP is fun as well. That's cute.
Yeah, there's some really interesting choices now. Like I think it's gonna be really interesting. Like deciding that role is actually really interesting now.
That's actually very true. Yeah. Okay, guys, how are we feeling for the game sequence and initiative? Should we roll into talking about the new Crit Op pack?
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. So we're gonna go into talking about the new Crit Op pack. We're going to start just with a brief overview, just as a primer, because it's going to make sense for what we're going to talk about. So just a brief overview. Crit Ops, they just involve the 3 objectives. Each map has these pre-laid out. You're always going to have one that is along the middle line at some point. You're always going to have one that's in one player zone, let's say the gray area, player 1, and you're going to have one that's fully within the orange zone, player 2. So That's going to be consistent across any map you see, any kill zone. Just basically the flavor is you're trying to either like capture these objectives or receive data or grab objects from these objectives as a kind of a narrative flavor.
Contemplate orb.
Or contemplate orbs, which is a new flavor in Kill Team. Or get your opponent to contemplate an orb. Yeah. Like a Palantir, just like, okay, perfect. So that's just a little primer. One thing I did want to prime as well, because this wording comes in a lot when we're talking about CritOps, is contesting and controlling markers. And I think it's a kind of a good thing to just go over. So contesting means that you have a marker within your control range. So that means an operative is contesting a marker if it's in your control range. And your friendly operatives control a marker if the total APL of your friendly operatives is greater than the total APL of enemy operatives, but control cannot change during an action. While the operative is carrying a marker, when we see the pickup marker action, we can explain that in a second. It contests and control that marker and is the only operative that can. So, George, did you have something to contribute on this one too?
Yeah, just one small thing to add about controlling. So you have to see the actual the marker itself for control range. It has to be visible to the operative trying to control it. So that's something you have to kind of watch for at the higher level play, where there might be, depending on where your head is rotated, you have to make sure that your operative can see the actual objective. Otherwise, you don't count as contesting it, which is really important. And there's a small clarification for the strongholds and Volcus. So any of the walls which are less than 2 inches high, they don't count as visibility. They don't count as blocking visibility for when determining control range. So for some Volcus maps, you can control the objective from outside the stronghold if the wall is low enough.
That is a very good point. So we can safely say that if this was a high wall here and this Vespid was on the other side of it, so this wall would be blocking visibility of this marker. Therefore, this operative here that's on the other side of the wall would not be contesting it or count for control because it's not in control range because it doesn't have visibility. Vivek, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, I just want to add one more clarification. It does kind of touch on it here, but if you are alone on an objective, your operative is contesting and controlling it. This is important. I think novitiates have some specific rules around contesting objectives. Even if you are alone, you are contesting it. Just because the language does make it feel like contesting means like an enemy needs to be around. Now, stage 1 is in control range, you're contesting. If you have more APL, you're now also controlling. So you're always contesting in control range. If you have more APL, you're controlling.
Perfect. That is a really good point because we will see in some CritOps and some TACOps, the words contesting and controlling are used. And it's important to know that, contesting, it feels like an enemy operative has to be there, but that's not the case.
No.
Okay, anything else to add, guys, on this? I think that was a really good explanation. And okay, so we're going to get into CritOps. So I've put some fun little pictures here just to kind of give a little bit of a visual for each of these. In my video that I posted earlier this weekend, just a little approved ops summary guide, I go into little small explanations of these. But I think it's just kind of nice to have somewhat of a little bit of a mental small picture of what's happening here. So these CritOps, we have 9 CritOps now in this pack. We had 9 before. 3 CritOps are coming in from the previous pack, and those are secure, loot, and transmission. And then 6 of the previous pack have been replaced with 6 new ones. So now we have 6 new ones: Orb, State Claim, Energy Cells, Download, Data, and Reboot. So this makes our entire pack. We have 3 returning and 6 new for 9. So you have basically 9 CritOps you can choose from for any particular game. Okay, so let's get into them, guys. So we're just going to do a quick overview of the first 3, just in case anyone needs a little reprimer on it. Secure, kind of like the catchphrase tap and go.
Yep. You tap,
Jen,
you don't need to sit on it unless your opponent comes and steals it from you.
Perfect. So you just need to control an objective, so have more APL than your enemy. Then you need to spend an APL, an action point, to secure that objective. So let's say you just lock it down. That is now yours, even if you leave it. Let's say you never touch that again. No one ever touches that again. You still get points for having it secured by you. And this can only happen, one stipulation that I think was on a previous slide that I want to just emphasize: you cannot do these actions or score any crit op points in the turning point 1. It can only happen in turning points 2, 3, and 4. So this is something to keep in mind as we're going through. All of these will be consistent throughout all the crit ops. George, did you have anything to add on secure?
No, let's keep going.
Okay, so one couple things is that I just wanted to say is that secure is actually a really good one if you're looking at not spending a lot of APL to get the objectives, because you could just, let's say, control your objective in the middle, secure those in the turning point 2, and then you could max this having only spent 2 APL on this crit op. So one little orange thing, a warning symbol, is it could allow you to leave an objective uncontrolled for your opponent to just come on it and secure it. So that's just a little precaution as you go through playing this one. Okay, and it also frees up more APL if you want to do an attack op or kill op, more points towards those. George?
Oh yeah, so I want to quickly raise one thing as well. So there's a maximum of 3 points per turn split among both players, and this gives a maximum total of crit op of 9 shared among both players, which is quite important. That's like a number that you should that's like one of the higher end ones, because there's a few coming up which are a little bit lower than that. So I just wanted to kind of draw attention to that.
So you could potentially split those 9 points, 5 for you, 4 for your opponent?
Yep. Or 6-3 or 4-5, like, because stuff gets tapped pretty early on.
But crucially, it is an odd number, so you can't both score equally on this crit op. Vivek, did you have something to add?
Which is really important.
Oh no, that was just that's a really good point. There's 9 points available, and you ostensibly want to try and score 12, 6-6, and you can't.
And the other thing as well, like compared to, so this is how important crit ops are as well. So there's three tracks of score in Kill Team, right? There's Kill Op, there's Tack Op, which is kind of independent, and you can't really kind of differentiate your score from your opponent. Like, you could both theoretically get 6 on it, which is even. There's Kill Op, which, unless it's even, is inherently one person's going to win it and get an extra point. And then Crit Op is the other way of getting like a differential, basically. So that's one thing to keep track of, because I think that Crit Op is going to be quite important for this set of cards. So working to kind of win Crit Op and get your differential there is going to be pretty important.
Very cool. That's really good that we touch on that, because all of those points are going to be valid coming up. So let's go to the most APL intensive crit op here. So we have loot, which is a returning crit op. So this is kind of like a race to grab things off of the objectives in terms of the flavor. Couple of good points. So basically, essentially the way it works is you just have to control an objective and you have to spend an APL. Once you spend that APL to loot the objective with the mission action, you instantly score 1 VP. So this scoring is done instantly, unlike others, which are kind of delayed. This one's kind of instant. So something that, Vivek, you're very familiar with. You've done this many times on loot when you were playing Vet Guard, which is now Death Corps of Krieg. If you have GA2 operatives that can activate in succession, so one activates and the other before your opponent does, this allows you to score 2 VP off of this before your opponent has a chance to win.
If you play it correctly, those 2 VP are off the backs of your opponent's points, and real rough for them.
Yeah, so really good with teams with GA2. And I guess this gives increased emphasis on initiative for this one as well. And it's important to note that once you score the loot action, your opponent can no longer loot the objective themselves. So this is another kind of odd scoring. You could be even if you just get 1 point each. But I think in terms of the overall total, it would end up kind of being an odd number as well.
Yeah, and you touched on it just then as well. So both players are kind of incentivized to do it early in their turn as well. So often you sometimes have the choice between killing a key enemy operative or looting to kill the point. Both choices can be correct in certain situations, and it's always quite difficult to figure out which is the best. That's something else to keep in mind. So you want to front load your mission actions in this crit op.
Yes, and we can fairly say that this one probably doesn't pair well with APL intensive tac ops. I guess if you paired this with Retrieval, for example, which has kind of a similar mechanic in the Recon tac ops, you're just spending a lot of action points to gather a bunch of stuff. So that's something to look out for if you are playing loot. Doing something that requires extra mission actions on top of this could be very taxing to your overall mission action count, your overall APL. Okay, anything else to add, guys?
Next. No, I think that's a really good point.
Next to transmission. Okay, so transmission, you basically have to get to an objective and you have to spend an action point to start initiating a transmission on that objective. So you're kind of like transmitting a signal that does require you to actually then control that transmitting objective at the end of the turning point. So you do not score a point for instantly transmitting. The only points you score come from controlling objectives that have had their transmission initiated. One big thing here is that you can go onto an objective, you can transmit it, you can have your operative there thinking, okay, sweet, I'm on this, and then your opponent rolls up, charges in, kills you, and if they are the ones who end up on your objective, even though you had initiated the transmission, they get the points for the objective, not you. So that's a big one for this one. It is one of the crit op missions that force you to be on an objective at the end, which is important to consider for TAC ops in the new pack as well. Vivek?
I think that the main focus for this TAC op, because it's tap and sit, unlike we talked about tap and go before, it's tap and sit. If your opponent can threaten an objective that you're thinking about turning on, just do not turn it on. You will give your opponent points. You'll be like, cool, I'll turn it on, and I'll come hang out here. And then your opponent will swiftly remove you from it and thank you for providing them with one crit op point.
Very true.
Even if it's your home objective and your opponent has like some guys staged up that you could probably get there, don't turn it on. Do not spend the APL and do the work for your opponent.
It also, just to follow on with that as well. So this mission, unlike loot, which wants you to kind of tap the points early, you're kind of incentivized to tap the points late in the turning point for transmission. And the person with last activation often is at a bit of an advantage in this mission as well. And the other point, which I have got by a few times, is the second bullet point of the scoring, is you can score 2 points of one objective.
You deny your opponent their transmitting objective.
Yep. So you don't need to score. Yeah, that's it. So you could either go for 2 objectives, or you could play to deny your opponent and then keep your home one safe, and you could still get 2 points from that, which is really strong.
Better way to do it, everybody.
Yep.
Very, very, very important to note. So, George, can you explain how you get the 2 points there?
So the bullet point says, if friendly operatives control more transmitting objective markers than enemy operatives do, you score 1 BP. And combined with the first one, if friendly operatives control any transmitting objective markers, you score 1 BP. So say if you had a person on your home one, you get 1 BP for controlling it. And then if you manage to deny or match your opponent on both the other objectives, you'd still get 2 points because you technically control more than them. So you can get, if you control 1, your opponent controls 0, you still score 2, basically.
That's right. So you control more, so 1 is more than 0. That is a very important point that I hadn't even realized until you guys just mentioned it right now.
It happens.
I went through
all the time. It happens all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, where you remove your opponent from their transmitting objective and then rolls around to scoring. It's like, I scored 2. It's like, what? You're only on 1 objective. It's like, but 1 is more than 0.
Wow, that is an incredibly important point, guys. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm glad we covered this. See, so even returning objectives after a year, it's important to go over them because you get some gold out of that, 100%. Very cool. So that's interesting. Yeah. So transmission, a lot to actually keep in mind. So thank you guys for explaining that. It's actually worth going through that in depth to get a better sense of it. Let's go to one of the new missions, which is
one of the ones I've actually played.
The Orb. So this one, and I'm not the first one to think of this, but we can kind of think of it as like a hot potato, where we've all kind of probably played that hot potato game when we're younger. You're trying to pass off an object to someone, and in this case it's an orb. You basically, the flavor of it is one objective will have an orb on it, and you do not want to control that objective. You want to control the other 2 objectives that don't have the orb. So we can think of this orb as like this thing that's like dazzling people and like confusing them. So you're trying to put this, a big disco ball,
Disco ball of Chegarak, okay? So it was extra distracting. So
yeah, you want to send that disco ball straight to where you think your opponent's going to be, and you want to be having a silent party on the other ones scoring points.
This one's really cool. I mean, I've only played 2 of these, but I found this one quite fun. So the way it works, the orb starts in the middle. It's like a ping pong ball, so it can only move 1 space. So you have 3 objectives. You have your home objective, no man's land, and opponents. It can only move 1 step. So it can go from no man's land to either home. But say I put it on my opponent's home, they can only push it to the middle. They can't push it all the way to my home. So it can only move 1 step at a time. What I found worked really well was forget your home objective. Go play the mid and your opponent's home, and put the orb on your home objective. Just go sit it over there. Quite fun. You just ignore your home objective and you just push on the other flank.
That is very interesting. If you go full aggro, then it doesn't matter because you're just going to be right up at their faces on their objectives. Yeah.
Final activation is so important for the orb, because it's one of those things where it's like, all right, if your opponent has final activation and you've just moved the orb to their home point, you're just going to move it back and deny you a point and pick up their point. So it's like, you don't really want to throw the orb to your opponent and be like, yeah, just throw it back to me and I'll lose a point, you gain a point. You really just want to control the objectives and try and remove the orb from the equation. And I found that just like, yeah, okay, I'll move it to my own home and take the midfield and your objective and just keep going from there. Because I was playing Death Watch, so you're always going to get out-activated. So the idea of like, all right, I could take the midfield and push the orb to my opponent's home, he's just going to push it back every single time. So I was like, all right, forget it. I'm never going to be able to get the orb like in my court the way I want. I will just move the orb and make my court the two objectives that now the orb cannot be on.
That's very true, very true. One thing I wanted to point out was this crit op doesn't technically require you to spend APL to score. So it can kind of free up some APL to score it and other things like attack op, which would maybe require more APL.
Open doors.
Or you could free up more points for shooting and fighting your opponent, which is always good. And it can be actually quite intensive, though. If you give it to them, they give it to you, you give it to them, and it passes back and forth.
Me and Dylan Q did that. We were busy batting it around, just like, ha.
So it can either be very intensive or very non-intensive. George, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so the other big thing as well is if you figure out the total maximum score from this, like between both players, it's only 6, which is huge. So compared to the 9 on the first 3, like there's only 6 potential points for crit op, which is very brutal. So like this one could be very, very swingy if your opponent out activates you. So if you're out activated, you have to really, really think about how you're going to approach the game. So like the approach that Vivek said could be quite a cool option to do, where you try to really pressure your opponent's objectives. Yeah, so just there's probably different ways of doing it. Or do you try to keep it on the mid and stop them from putting it onto yours? So you keep it from 1-1. I think there's quite a few ways to approach this one, so it's quite an interesting mission.
So could we say that probably this isn't one you want to do make your primary, because you're probably going to only get 2?
Yeah, you're probably only going to get 2. Basically, if you're scoring 6 on this, you've tabled your opponent. Like the game is won in various other sectors well before you're scoring 6 on this crit op.
Maybe for like a horde or something like Brood Brothers. I don't know. Like, but then
you do have I guess you can maximize moving the orb around with the horde, but then you almost end up with too many people trying to play the objectives, and now that opens up multi-charges and AoE and all other kinds of problems.
Exactly. Yeah, so you're probably trying to get into your DZ to get the damage reduction from Death Watch, and then probably playing Rout or Dominate as well. Like if you can go for kills, it's definitely a risk on take.
This is like one of the zanier crit ops because of the low amount of scoring available.
I love it. I think it's really interesting. It's a really cool mission.
It's my favorite already. I mean, I'm biased. I only played 2 of them, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm going to try to like 3D print like an orb and just paint it as a disco ball and just have it ready anytime I'm playing this mission.
The other thing you can do as well is if you have control of the middle objective, so if you're like an elite team, you could keep someone activated, you could keep someone on engage on your home point. So you could always counteract, move the orb to the middle, your penultimate activate, your last counteract, and then try to go even on crit op as well. That's probably the other way of playing it.
Well, yeah, hold the orb and then counteract it into the middle. Oh, yeah, that's a fun way to do it too.
Very cool, very cool. All right, very interesting one. Can't wait to try that one out myself. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is Stake Claim, which is a very interesting one. This, basically, the overall flavor of this is that you're going to make a claim at the start of the turn. Both of you will make a claim that you will either control a particular objective or they won't contest yours. So you're kind of making a declaration at the start of the turn. And very interesting in that it's going to be something you're going to have to do each turn, both of you, and it's going to something that rewards planning probably and thinking a few steps ahead. So you will just basically have to, in the Gambit phase, so in the same time you would be playing a strategic ploy, you would be doing this claim, and you can either make one of 2 claims. You can either choose an objective marker and say that your friendly operatives will control that marker, or you can choose an objective marker and say that enemy operatives won't contest that objective marker at the end of this turning point. And as we clarified earlier, contesting means no enemy operative will have that marker in their control range at the end of it. One big thing to note here is you can't keep choosing the same objective. You have to choose a unique objective each time. So if you choose your home objective turn 2, you cannot choose that for turns 3 or 4. You have to choose either of the other ones until you've ended up choosing each of the objectives at least once. George, you have something to add here?
Yeah, I've played this mission once against Joe's Starshiders. I absolutely loved it. I think it's a really, really well-designed mission.
Cool.
It's really cool. It's really dynamic. Like, it emphasizes playing the whole board as well. So it will punish the teams who just want to sit on 2 objectives and camp the whole time as well, because they're definitely incentivized to push. So I think it's going to open up quite a lot of interaction between the 2 players. It's going to be really interesting the decisions people make and how it interacts with the new initiative system. And yeah, it's a really cool matchup. And I think the other thing to note as well, is quite high scoring. It could be potentially quite high scoring for both players, depending on which options they choose. So this might be quite a good one for Crit Op as your primary.
I think even for the KG teams where like I only want to play 2 objectives, I think it's still a pretty safe 5 points if you're playing those 2 objectives well, because you'll most likely lose basically 1 claim. Your goal is like, I'm going to control more for that one for 3 turning points, and I'm going to get 2 of my claims by most likely just controlling home in the no man's land.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And then all you really lose is the last claim. If you're playing a team that's like, yeah, I want to play 2 out of 3, you're really only giving up 1 point, and you still get 3 on primary.
Yep. Yeah, you're totally right. But yeah,
is this one of the crit ops where you could evenly score max both of you if you arranged your claims in a way
because somebody needs to control more. So no matter what, that point is going to go one way or the other.
Yeah. So that there are 3 points for controlling more, and then each player has like a bonus 3 they could get, I think.
Very true. So yeah, so you would. I think most crit ops are designed that you wouldn't be able to get 6 points each.
Yeah, so I think one player could get 5, the other player could get 4, I think, because each player has a maximum.
And with the way the claims work, okay, ostensibly people will pick home point first or mid board if it happens to be in a good spot. But any time where it's like, if both opponents are like, they pick home point first for the first one, and then realistically they're going to pick midpoint, somebody's going to be losing that one if you both pick a midpoint. So there is a little more up in the air with it. It's not as crazy as Orb in the amount of points that are not available rather. There are more available, but there's some really interesting situations where if claims are picked on the same objective, now it's mutually exclusive. Only one person is going to be able to get that point because of what the claims are. You either need to control it, or enemy can't contest it. And if your opponent picks the same thing, actually, I guess what if you both pick enemy operatives won't contest and nobody is on it, you both score it. So, okay, there are ways. This is interesting.
That's cool, though. That's actually a really good point, because you can kind of counter-pick what your opponent picks. So I was reading the card just then. The person with initiative chooses first. So, like, you'll know when they're going to choose the middle one. So you could then counter-pick, I'm going to go for the middle one as well. Then it gets interesting.
It's cool. It's kind of neat. Yeah, it's very neat.
Yep.
I love anything that adds like little psychological games to it. It's great.
Yeah, especially because if you like use your card to get initiative, now your opponent almost has a little bit of an advantage to counter you, which is an interesting point. Really cool. Yeah, it looks like a fun mission. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, let's move on to number 6, energy cells. Okay. This one, I like to think of these objectives as being these like big, heavy energy cells that both sides are trying to just pick up, and they're just like incredibly heavy. So unless you have this like super big elite operative, it's going to be very hard to pick up. So the name of the game for this one is at the end of each turning point, if friendly operatives control more objective markers than enemy operatives do, you score 1 VP. So you don't have to pick up the marker. You can just be on it. You can be controlling the marker. But if you do pick up the marker, you count as controlling it. As we saw earlier, you are the only one who counts as controlling it if you pick up this marker. So I think if an enemy operative, like you, if you pick up this energy cell and an enemy operative comes within your control range, I think they are not considered contesting it. You are the only one considered contesting it. So
because
they're going to have to kill you.
Exist on the board for your opponent to attempt to contest or control it.
Yes. So at the end of the battle, for each objective marker you're carrying, you score 1 VP. So you can get 3 VP for controlling, and then you can get an additional 3 VP for carrying I believe.
Yeah, this is another really low scoring one, right? So there's 3 points total for controlling at the end of 20.2, 3, 4. And then there's another 3 points split between both players for controlling objectives 1, 2, 3.
For carrying.
Legionaries
Yeah.
would play this kind of well. Being able to have a 4 APL operative in TP2 to go pick one up for 3 and run.
I had the Canop tech as well.
Yeah.
Man, the Canop tech's going to be brutal.
Do they have
APL?
The leader can go 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have options. So it is like it can't be free, it can't be reduced, but there's ways to get 4 APL and just pick up and run.
It's even gross. It's even gross, right? Because you could do it with the Matrix as well. So you could be in your deployment
and you just yoink.
Spend 3 APL to yoink. Oh my god.
Yeah. So one thing we can think of, just an easy way to remember, is that these energy cells, we can think of them as kind of emptying. So it's going to cost you the most early on to pick them up, and then it gets progressively lighter. So these things to pick up become progressively lighter. It's going to cost you an additional 2 AP, which means that you're going to spend 1 AP for the pickup marker action, and then an additional 2 AP. So technically, turn 2, you're spending 3 APL to pick this up. Turn 3, you're spending 2 APL. And turn 4, you're just spending the 1 as normal.
And in turn 4, you can make it free or reduce it, etc., which is great.
That's a very good point.
The thing I raised my hand for, George, I did, this isn't perfect math yet, but I looked at a bunch of the maps and was trying to figure out where the Canoptic could go with the thing. I don't think in TP2 the node reaches any home objective. I think 3 inches is just short.
I just looked up as well. You can't pick up as well, so it's good.
Ah, perfect. All right, because that would be super lame, GW, if you were just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to stand here and pick it up behind my ITD wall real quick. Yeah, I'm going to pick it up.
What you could do, though, you could just move on to the middle point and pick up the middle point and then start scoring that, which is pretty good.
Ooh, with Warp Coven with a teleport token. This is like, it's really interesting stuff going on here. Like, give someone a little rebound 6 inches away and then they pick up. Yoink.
So one thing I put here is it doesn't require APL to score for 3 of the VP, but for another 3 of the VP, for the other half, it does require APL to score. So because you do have to spend at least 1 APL. However, Vivek, you were saying if you wait until turn 4, let's say a scenario opened up, you waited until turn 4 and you had ways of reducing this APL, you could have 3 separate operatives pick up all 3 objective markers. Let's say a wacky scenario opened up. You could maybe reduce all of those and pick them up.
Yeah, like if you had multiple ways to reduce and whatnot, you could go out, you could do all your offensive actions and be like, yeah, I'm pick it up. I have reduced mission action by 1. Pick it up.
So I think for most teams, they're going to be trying to pick up I don't think many teams will be picking up on 20.2. Yeah, I think most teams will be looking at picking up 20.3 and maybe mostly 20.4. Like you can maybe as like
Watch
an elite
probably
team.
Pick up on 2.
Yeah, I think maybe, but then you're wasting your whole move, right? Because it costs you 3 APL.
Well, so, I mean, the guy is just sitting on the home point at the end of TP1, and then top of TP2, you just pick it up because
if you finish your move like an elite on 20.3, win initiative, pick up the 2, you can still kind of do something useful.
That's true.
And the other thing I was going to talk about was I can't remember now. So
this feels a little gross for Raveners who are like. Pick up Bro, pick up Burrow.
So the other thing I was going to say as well, so each of the TACOP archetypes, they each have one mission, which is linked to mission markers. So you got Retrieval, you have Sweep and Clear, you have Plant Device, and you have another one which I can't remember, Martyrs. So I think these ones will be tricky to play on this mission because if the objectives are potentially being picked up, you might not be able to score them. But if some maybe Plant Device, if you could get that on your opponent's home one and they pick it up later, that's
if you pick up these markers, nothing says you can't place them down.
Yeah, you could place them down. Yeah.
So could you potentially place? Let's say you grab the middle objective, you bring it back into your zone, you place it down, and then one of your operatives places a device on that.
Yeah, but I think your opponent has to contest it for you to score though. So you could do like Martyrs or or what's the other one?
Maybe Retrieval you could do. Retrieval, grab your opponent's objective, bring it.
Yeah.
Another question I had is, let's say I take an operative in turn 2, I spend an additional 2 APL to lift that marker. So I've boosted a guy to 3 APL. I've used all his action points to take it. If someone just comes and kills him, he drops the marker. I can choose to place it within control range. If I then, let's say, want to go pick that marker up again, if the opportunity comes, do I then spend the additional 2 AP again?
I think so, yeah.
I think so, right? It's not just that first time you lift it.
Yeah,
it's that whole turning point.
If
right?
you're in
Whole
turning point
thing,
2,
yeah.
if you're performing the pick marker action on the objective marker, it costs an additional 2 AP, whether it's been picked up 10 times or 0 times.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because that might be a point that could be confusing. Okay, perfect. And one other thing we should mention is if you're carrying an objective marker, it cannot be removed and set up again more than 6 inches away. So if you've picked it up, you cannot kind of like
Shadow portal. If you're like a Mandrake player, you can't like teleport or fly. So you can only move 6 inches basically.
Shade Runner is extra heavy, loses an inch of movement.
Could you shadow portal if it wasn't more than 6?
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't lock you out from doing any of those unique move actions. It just stipulates you can't move more than 6 at that point. Okay,
yeah,
this
that's
is
how
actually
I read it.
really fun for Warp Coven and their home objective.
Corsairs will be good at this. Blazer Cane might be okay. There's some fun teams.
Yeah, with Shade Runner.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Any additional things to talk about for this, or we can move on?
This one will be like, once everybody gets like 15 games with it, there'll be an added layer of how this should be played.
Okay, our next one is download. And I've put a little thing to kind of remember the late scoring on this is, wow, these download speeds are slow. And the reason I phrased it like that is because you basically cannot score this. You cannot do the download action on the second turning point. So it kind of happens in the later 2 turning point actions, like 3 or 4. So that's why I've said these download speeds are slow. So basically, the name of the game is to control more objective markers than your enemy operatives do. So you get 1 point for scoring. So let's say it's turn 2, you can gain 1 VP for scoring more, controlling more than your opponent. However, what happens differently is in turns 3 and 4, you can perform a download action on any objective. This download action instantly gets you a VP, kind of like an instant scoring, kind of like loot. We're back into an instant score. However, when you're going to count your controlled operatives afterwards, you can't count an objective that has been downloaded. So as soon as you download that objective, I think that it's no longer participating in the game, if I read this correctly, right?
Yeah.
Also, on turning point 4, if you perform the download, instead of scoring 1 VP instantly, you score 2. So this kind of incentivizes players to wait until turn 4 if you're trying to get more points out of this, which kind of leads to a little cat and mouse game of, do you wait or do you just get it early to prevent your opponent from getting it?
It's also uncapped.
Thoughts?
You could go score 6 by downloading 3 in TP.
That's very true.
Or I think you're quite incentivized to download your opponent's safe objective on 20.3 as well. Deny them that. There's a lot of play to this mission. It seems really cool.
It seems really deep in the kind of combinations of scoring that you can do.
Yeah, TP2, they really want you to set up to be like, hey, prepare to download in TP3 because you really want to control more objectives. So you're going to want to sit on 2 out of 3 of them. And then bam, you roll over. That you again being able to roll over and be like, cool, I'm just going to download these 2 points immediately.
You got to be careful of Crute and Ratlings
coming and shanking your stuff from you.
Because they could do that on your home objective. And
this is a really good one for Crute.
This could be good for Crute.
Yeah, and one thing too is like, it's almost like it's got that instant scoring feel from loot, but it also has the like kind of tap and just leave it feel from secure. So
also the point denial as well. There's a lot you could do to mess with your opponent as well. Because if they're if they set up trying to defend their home objective and you manage to tap it on 20.3, like you've kind of locked them out of quite a lot of potential scoring as well, which is good.
It made it really hard to score that, particularly that one for controlling more is really rough. And if you tap your opponents and then the mid into like near the top of TP3, it now becomes really hard for them to score any points because now your home objective, if you hold it, you're gonna get that control more because the other 2 are downloaded. You've already scored 2 from the downloads.
Yeah, so if you're a team which has good access to good tack ups and can play the kill up well, that might be a good way of playing this mission.
This one's great. I love ones where you can turn objectives off permanently. Be like, yep, this objective is done. No more scoring from it.
Yeah, so this one would it would be one you'd want the initiative on that turning point 3, 4, big time.
Pull out your reroll, pull out your +1, your +2.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love right now the way that Kill Team kind of works with all three methods kind of intermingling of scoring. Is that like, let's say you get the initiative and you go do this download action, you're like, let's say your crew player is going to throw their operative onto your back point and score it. That crude operative is almost guaranteed for your kill op because they've just probably come into a really, really easy to kill position. So there's all of this like balance between like kind of like you're throwing a bit of kill op points at your opponent to kind of like score that. So there's all this like flowing give and take between the three methods of scoring, which is really interesting. Okay, very nice. So download looks to be a very interesting one, really well designed by the looks of it, and exciting one to play. All right, let's go to data. Or data. I can't ever choose which way to pronounce it.
Oh, they're correct, everybody. It's fine. Live your life.
Exactly. I'm just like, choice is yours. You could say it however you want. So I like to think of this as like you're compressing files, like sending attachments in an email, like you're compressing them on the objective, and then you're like sending them to upload. You're sending them off. Yeah. So we have. Basically, we're wanting to control actions. We're wanting to control objectives and spend actions to use the compile data action on these markers. You can only do the compile data action once per turn, and you want to basically compile more data than your opponent. So it's kind of like loot in that it's kind of a race to get to the objective to compile this data so that you can have more of it than your opponent. But then there's the added thing of you can then, whatever data is on that objective, you can basically send it for additional points. And if I've read this correctly, guys, the send data action doesn't have to be on an objective that you yourself has compiled data on.
Yeah,
it's like the one from the old set.
Yep. It's like a weird mix between coordinates and intel from last time. So for turning point 4, you could if you want to score the max 3 from each objective, you're going to have to do the compile data and the send data actions. That's two mission actions you have to account for.
Where my head is at, staging up on your opponent's home objective at the bottom of TP2, you get initiative TP3, charge, fight, free mission action, compile, last APL spent to send 3 of your opponent's points back to you for VPs.
It's good.
Yeah, so...
Sorry. So this is quite high scoring as well from what it seems like, right? So there's 9 potential points on each of the objectives, and there's also 3 points each round for whoever downloaded more, whoever compiled more, right? So there's a maximum of 12 points. Am I correct? Am I counting that correctly? So there's 3 points, 9 points for uploading.
Yeah, there's 9 points available, 3 by 3 points.
Compiling. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's sort of 12 points up for grabs.
Yeah, so this might be a good one for Crit Op if you're looking for primary.
I think you can theoretically go 6-6 on this, just like off the top of my head, because if somebody sends 6 points worth of stuff, the other person sends 3 points and has compiled more 3 times. Yeah, so you could go 6 and 6 on this.
Yeah,
I would say it's probably the highest points available we've seen so far.
I think so. Yeah, I think this is one of the few where you can go 6 and 6.
The other thing as well, right? So we missed this for the last one. Could you quickly go back, Thomas, one slide? So the key thing on this is you can only download your opponent's or the center objective as well. So you can't download your home one, which is really important.
That is a very,
so
very
this is very much a go shank the mid in your opponent and then sit on your home point for the control more and dance around.
Yep.
Yes. Very easy sometimes to miss a couple words when you're looking at these crit ops. But again, yes, on download, one big stipulation is that it has to be the center opponent's objective marker that you download. So it's very hard to get that safe like 2VP for downloading your own. It's impossible to get it to download your own. You have to do it. You have to be a bit more aggressive. Okay, very, very good thing to point out. And let's see here. Do we have the same stipulation for send data? No, I believe.
No, this is just all open because it's
you can send
points.
data on your own point. Okay, so you can send data from your own, but in download you cannot.
Remember, kids, onto your own. If you see your opponent staging up mostly on your home point and the midpoint, maybe don't compile data on your home point. Maybe like think about whether your opponent's thinking about trying to shank you in TP3 and steal your points.
It's pretty fun.
It could be a real wrench in their game plan. Like, yeah, cool. I'm just not going to compile for you to try and take later.
Yeah, that's quite a good point actually, because like you're spending so many actions to kind of compile. The opponent, like if your opponent says, "Yeah, just compile the data for me, nerd," I'm gonna come
yeah, exactly. Like, hey, thanks for the 2 extra compiles. I'm gonna come in and take it now. And like, say, like, I'm going to use Deathwatch for comparison because it's just the only thing on my mind right now. Like, they're 3 APL. If you're a 2 APL team, having 2 bodies on that point is uncomfortable because that is a 2-body multi-charge for somebody to get their ankles held.
Very true.
So, like, trying to deny it then puts you in a different dangerous position.
Very true. Okay, did we get everything? I think we touched on everything. Yeah, just again to reiterate, you can't perform the compile data more than once on each individual objective. And once, so let's just, could you send data and then compile again and then send again?
It looks like it because there's no rider in here talking about if you've sent it, you can't compile more. It just says you can't send if there are no points. That is actually kind of cute. You could, if you were playing a cagey game, you could compile, send, compile, send, compile, send to like play it safe sort of thing.
And if you're going to send, you can on 20.4 though.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. There's a clear cut. You can only send on TP4.
But you could send it twice on 20.4 though, right? So what you could theoretically do is both players could send data from the same objective, which is super weird. No, but you can't. No, but you can't get if you gained it this turn.
You wouldn't be able to compile, send, compile, send again. Okay.
Yeah, because you can only compile once.
Yeah.
Yes. Because you can only compile once per turn on each objective, so you can't really. You can't compile, send. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very good. There's a lot of interactions with that, and sometimes it can be easy to think that you can't. You can like some of the CritOps can feel like similar, so it's good to kind of clear up.
Oh, sorry. One more thing to add. This one kind of feels a bit like loot as well, where you're kind of incentivized to do the tapping early in your turn as well, especially on the last turn. So like last turn initiative on 20.4 is going to be super important.
Really important because now if you get shanked, very bad.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, very nice. We'll go to the last one, guys. Okay, perfect.
I played this one.
Reboot. I don't know if you guys saw that old Canadian show.
Oh yeah, dude. I watched all of Reboot back in the day. It does not hold up, by the way, ladies and gentlemen.
We've got its successor now in a Crit Op and Kill Team. So I think of this as kind of like a randomized whack-a-mole where 2 moles pop up and 1 goes down depending on your dice rolls. So two objectives are active, 1 is inactive. And the way that we decide this is there's going to be a little bit of a mini game in the Gambit step of each strategy phase. Both players will pick a number that they will basically put a number of dice in their hand that matches the marker's number. One thing to say first off is when you're setting up the battle, you have to label each marker 1 to 3. So each of them will be labeled 1, 2, and 3. And then in this Gambit step, you are going to put, let's say, 3 dice in your hand to say that you are going to choose 3 and your opponent can have 1. If you have 1 dice in your hand, your opponent has 3, the objective that is inactive will be the number 2 objective. Okay. If you have put 3 dice in your hand, your opponent has put 3 dice, the inert objective will be the one that is labeled 3. And so the one that gets inert, the inert label on it, is the one that you cannot score points on. So you want to control the other 2 that are not inert. And inert is a kind of not so common word. I would just kind of think of it as inactive, maybe an easier way to remember it than inert. And so kind of random game. But there might be some kind of mind games if you guys...
There is kind of like, it feels very complicated, but there are, generally speaking, there's always a safe thing you can pick. So, for example, picking your opponent's safe objective, not necessarily home, and like they could be stacked wherever on the board. You could pick your opponent's safe objective, and then if they pick your safe objective, no man's land gets inert. Generally speaking, the safest pick is pick the contested objective, the one you're both fighting over. If you pick that one, if your opponent picks their own safe objective, it'll turn off your home, but that would require your opponent to pick their own safe objective and do the mind games. You can more or less just pick the contested one and feel pretty safe in knowing that the contested one, or if your opponent picks your home, their home gets turned off.
Then if they pick their home, your home gets turned off.
But that's the thing. The psychological choice of picking your own home objective is going to be a big one and not a lot of players are going to do. That's the next tier of mind games where it's like, okay, wait. My opponent might be trying to do the tricks here. I'll pick my own home objective, and it turns out they just also picked your home because it's the most obvious choice to pick, and now you've shut off your own home objective.
It's a bit kind of like rock, paper, scissors, where when I play rock, paper, scissors, I always just stay rock, and I just keep going rock. And it usually wins me most times.
Like, sure, your opponent may be like, you know what, I'm on to you. And then TP4, he's like, I'm going to pick my home. And that's the one you're like, yeah, I pick your home because I feel like I'm just going to go win the center objective now.
So the one little caveat that we should probably mention is you can reboot the inert objective as well, because it costs 2 actions. So it is, you can do it. It's not the end of the world if your home objective does get made inert, but it does cost you quite a significant amount of resources in your action economy to boost it back up.
If you're a horde team,
this
is like just a freebie for you most of the time. It's like, oh no, my home point's off. You there, Gribbly number 7, please turn it back off.
Yeah. Could someone get that?
Yeah, can someone get that?
That is a massive thing to point out, is that if
you're a horde team, just pick your home objective every single time.
Yeah, that is just a massive thing, is that if we did not have this reboot action, the whole name of this, the whole thing that gives us this crit op the name, if you didn't have that, then it would kind of be a lot less scoreable. But if you do have that extra bodies to kind of just be on your home objective, let's say that's the one that's inert, this can be open up to be quite high scoring, right? Because we have the opportunity to keep all 3 objectives scoring, and I believe you don't have to control more. It's just you get points for however many you control. So it can be shared a lot of points probably in this mission more so than others.
It's a max of 9, 3x3.
Yeah.
It's another control one as well. So there's quite a few missions which require control.
I have to sit on it, yeah.
Yeah. So really interesting. Given that you've said that, George, I did put together a little bit of kind of a summary to kind of give us a bird's eye view of what we just went over. So let's go on to some of these. I don't think I quite finished this slide, but we can see that we have some things. So some APL intensive CritOps would be loot, where you have to guaranteed spend 6.
Yeah, no way around it. If you want to score 6, you have to either spend 6 or, 6 plus equivalent free mission actions, etc. You got to go do 6 things to score 6 points.
Exactly. Yes, you could. Exactly. That is a good point. If you do have ways of getting free mission actions, you won't feel this maybe full 6 APL. But yeah, definitely requires something. Potentially intensive could be data, energy cells. If you're picking up multiple times, if you're picking up those energy cells. Orb, if you're sending it back and forth between each other, could be potentially intensive. Transmission could be potentially intensive if you are the one doing all the transmitting and your opponent is
it's basically like its cap is basically at loot. Like, if you're doing all the work, you're gonna have to do 6 things to score 6 points.
Yes. And then so all of these intensive ones we could say could be potentially lighter as well.
Which
if
one
you
are we
play
missing?
It right. I think we might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
8.
6, 7, 8. I think we're missing
Reboot.
Yeah, reboot. Yeah,
yes.
there we go.
I didn't quite finish the slide, so reboot could be. Well, you could say reboot would be in the potentially light or intensive, depending on if you're rebooting your objective every single time. You could spend 6 APL.
It's almost like night and day. For some teams, it just does not matter. Like, reboot is like, cool. Yeah, somebody go get that. For other teams, it's an existential crisis.
Yes. And one that's guaranteed no APL is stake claim.
So the reason why this slide is really important, just to give a bit of context for slightly newer players or players who want to kind of break into the competitive scene. So we played for a year with the approved ops 2024, and there was one tac op called Plant Beacons, which is basically loot for each player, where you spend an action to put a beacon down in a certain point of the board, and you have to do that 6 times to score 6 points. And at the beginning of the edition, people were extremely high. People was kind of mixed, so people were kind of questioning it, but then it became like the kind of the dominant strategy in the early game, in the early kind of stages of that crit op pack, to take loot, to take Plant Beacon, and it's extremely action intensive. Basically, people were taking against each other, and it led to very cagey games, and with both players kind of spending a lot of their APL to max tac op, right, to get 9 points on tac op. But then what happened was there was a bit of a shift after the new year, where people kind of figured out if both players do this, nobody is getting an advantage, and the only way you can kind of break the differential is if you win Kill Op or if you win Crit Op. So what players kind of figured out is we began to explore different tac ops which were less action intensive and reroute the APL you'd be spending on planting beacons into actually playing kill team and killing your opponent basically and scoring at the same time. So instead of playing the tac op track and then one of the others, you'd be playing the crit op, the kill op, and then just getting enough on your tac op to get the 5 points for your primary op. And also, importantly, putting so much pressure on your opponent that it would deny them the opportunity to score their beacons as well. And this was like the big meta shift. People were just coming around to it before the rotation and the release of this new card packet. So stuff like for tac ops, if you're looking, so for some of these missions, it's okay to plant beacons. So say if that was still around, say if you're looking at the new, if you're and there's something quite action intensive, you'd have to really, really think about taking it on the potentially intensive ones and definitely on loot. But maybe stake is quite a good crit op to take that tac up. And then on the inverse as well. So say it's something that's quite intensive, you want to look at the tac ops that should less action intensive. Vivek, what do you have to add?
Just to build off of everything you said. So yeah, the meta originally started with beacons. In my opinion, it's because it gave you control over your scoring. There's nothing your opponent could do directly. If you go out, I plant 2 beacons, I get 2 points, I move my operatives, I do it, get my points. So I think it was just like a place of safety almost, because the only way for your opponent to deny beacons is to just kill everybody, and then now nobody to plant beacons, I can score no more points. What I found once I realized that beacons was a trap, it was just trapping everybody in, and I switched to confirm kill. Confirm kill hard counters beacons. Because your opponent is going to hang their ass out to plant beacons, and then they are going to die for it, and then give you points on 2 fronts. You're going to score tac and kill, while they're just trying to score tac. And in the meantime, you're focusing on killing people, which means you're now also open up to playing the crit way better, because you're not even worrying about playing a tac op at that point.
Exactly, yeah. So the way that things interact, like you're just saying, we're going to see tac ops, they're going to interact with crit ops, as George was just saying, and as Vivek, as you're going to say, and we're going to cover tac ops. We're going to do them justice in their own video to make it easier for people to digest. But there's going to be even interactions between tac op choices. We're going to see maybe retrieval and then like steal intelligence might have a similar interaction between like plant beacons and confirm kill as we had earlier. So we could see some of that interplay. So again, a nice swirling mix of all these interactions, and then kill ops always coming in, like you said, George, and like you said, Vivek, you have to manage your own operative resources as well. So very cool. That's why Kill Team is one of the most in-depth, interesting competitive games. There's a few other things probably to keep in mind with CritOps. That is basically the...
Yeah, it's a great slide.
Yeah, so this one, like we were saying, is another interaction with tac ops, because a lot of tac ops will interact with objectives. So this slide kind of outlines where you know your opponent's going to try to be on objectives, or where you're going to try to be on objectives to score crit op. This could interact with certain tac ops like Martyr, where you're trying to die on an objective. Sweep and clear, if you know they're going to be sitting on there, you can go kill them and get that. So there's going to be some tac ops coming up. So we can see that 4 missions need you to be controlling objectives at the end of the turning point to gain VP. That's Transmission, Orb, State Claim, and Reboot. And then we have other ones where they kind of are, you gain VP, but you don't have to remain on it. That's Secure. And then we have Loot and Data. And then hybrid of both styles would be kind of energy cells, where you have to stay on them the first little bit. And then you get some for just holding at the end, and then download where you get points for holding more, but then you're getting also points for downloading as well.
Yeah, so just to expand on that as well. So as we kind of noted, like as we're kind of going through the slides, we're talking about this idea of activation advantage. So what this basically means is each turning point, you and your opponent have like a certain number of activations. And historically, what's been pretty strong for control missions, having more activations than your opponent, you can kind of dictate how the board looks at the end of each turning point. So you have a bit more of a say about how those crit ops are scored. So this might potentially put horde teams with more activations and operatives in a slightly better spot than what they were previously, or teams that are very, very defensive and very hard to shift off of points.
Yeah, this is going to open up a whole new world, and we got about 7-8 8 weeks to really get all of it in before we all gotta go play at Worlds real quick.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
Yeah.
Look, I love that they're doing the same thing they did last year, which is like, hey guys, here's like a whole bunch of new stuff right before you do this thing. Hiya!
Nice thing this time is that we have just like new CritOps and new TAC-Ops to just absorb mainly. Last year it was like, it was basically 30 new teams because every team was new again. And then it was like all like pretty much 1.5 rules. So it's like an expansion on that.
Well, I mean, adding the kill op was like a huge, like the big things, kill op, cutting the number of objectives in half, things like that. Massive fundamental shifts in the way the game actually worked and played. Because in the previous edition, you're trading bodies for points is the meta. That like if your guys are dying to score points, you were doing this correctly. Now there's just more math involved. It's like, am I dying to score enough points?
Or if the points I'm dying for, is it a wash or is it like a net?
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
for me?
oh, dude, I went and did all this cool thing, but like I gave up 1 kill grade, which then got him that extra point, which then nullified all of my gains.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Now we have even other ways like martyrs where it's like, oh, I'm getting some points back if I die.
Oh, Thomas, they made that tack up for you. That sounds like a Thomas tack up if I ever heard one.
So I
Just
thought,
sit on an objective. Come get me, bro.
yeah, exactly, dude. I thought dominate.
The bait. You're
would
a
be
nice
awful.
juicy dwarf.
Yeah, just come kill me. I thought dominate would be awful. Actually, quite reasonable and quite interesting because you can spread the kills around your team and then rip them for points. So is kind of cute. I think that it's 0 APL requires you to only play 2 sectors of the game. If you're killing stuff and scoring crit op, you are also playing your tag op.
Yeah, attack ops. I love that interaction between you have your main mission and then your own thing. I love adding your own little flavor. You can play your own game that you want to play. So can't wait to dive into that. I think we'll finish off with one little just last slide. One more just thing to keep in mind is the scoring timing. So some of them, you can only score 2 VP max each scoreable turning point. And those ones are secure, loot, transmission, orb, state claim, and reboot. So you're going to try to want to be scoring every single turn. There's some that are differentiating scoring, so they're at various times. So they could be at ends of certain turns, or they could be at the end of the battle, for example. And those are energy cells, download, and data. So again, like we had mentioned this going through them a few times, but some you want to be actively thinking about doing each turn. Some you can kind of plan to the end. Like I'll just try to go full ham and destroy my opponent, and then I'll do it at the end. So good things to keep in mind as a general principle.
Yeah, that last bullet point is really important. You got to be really careful about making early trades on some of those missions, and not having enough board presence at the end of the game to score Crit Op properly. So like it will have that knock-on effect. And with the new initiative as well, like those 2 factors are going to be really important to keep in mind when you play some of those missions.
Yeah, so there's some missions to go aggressive, and then there's some you might want to just second guess going full ham right away because you might not be in a position to score what you want to score later on. And again, we have that 3-way interaction, so this is something that you're going to have to be kind of balancing in your mind, and this is part of the art of competitive kill team is magically balancing these 3 different methods of scoring, and even technically 4 because primary adds a little bit
Primary
extra.
is important. It looks like they're starting to use it in tournaments for tie breaks as well. I think the one Devin and the boys in Montreal, Golden Ticket, that Aiden won, I think they were using primary as a tie break, which is very fun, like primary points scored over the course of the tournament.
It could be good because, as we're saying, if you do total points, like
it's also in your control.
The...
That's where strength of schedule feels like not great as a tiebreak because it's not in your control. Like there's nothing you can do about your strength. If you win every game, you're playing the opponents assigned to you. Like that's the most you can do for your strength of schedule is I'm playing in the undefeated bracket, and it's just out of your control. You play against people who don't play well, and then you end up losing on that tiebreak. I understand it pretty feels bad, but primary is like, yeah, you pick your primary every game. The ball is in your court. You do well on the tiebreaker.
I like that. All right, so I think that pretty much concludes, I believe, our discussion on CritOps. So hopefully this gave the listeners a nice summary. I think we found some nice juice that I hadn't even come close to thinking of that you guys mentioned. So just absolutely so excited that you guys came on because I just feel like I just got much clearer on a lot of these than I had.
Yeah, me too, to be honest. This has really helped get the juices flowing. I've been kind of out of it because like with the approved ops on the horizon is very much a I want to wait until this all filters in before I start practicing again, because it's very much this is a big shift in all of the missions, all of the TAC ops. The old formulas of doing things, particularly because scouting phase is gone, so no more repositions, no more equipment to help support in the scoring of these things. So a lot of stuff has changed with this new ops pack.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's been great just reading them through you guys as well, like kind of just hearing what you guys have to say as well, because like it's all so fresh and we haven't seen half of these. I'm sure
We haven't even
if
played
we
them all yet. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So I think if we come back in a few weeks as well, once we've had a bit more experience with some of the newer missions, I'm sure we'll discover new things and have lots more juicy nuggets of info
absolutely,
to share with
yeah.
everyone.
I like having a nice primer going in there because if you don't have a primer like this, then sometimes you're learning the things that you could have primed yourself on during the game. And then
It makes decisions easier in game as well. If you have a plan about how you're going to score your CritOps and what you need to do, it makes decisions what you have to do each turn much easier because you have some sort of framework.
100%.
And yeah, it just makes everything easier. I think even if it's a bad plan, like you're having a bad plan is better than having no plan. And it makes the games quicker as well.
If you have a plan, you can make adjustments to a plan. If you have no plan, you don't know whether what you set out to do worked or didn't. You just kind of are reacting.
Yeah, you just making like random moves, and then you have to think about every single. It takes so much longer. Like you have to think like you're gonna have to rethink for every single operative what you want to do with it. But then if you have like a kind of broad plan about how you want to score the crit up, like what you need to do to approach it, it makes kind of prioritizing what you need to do each turn a lot quicker, a lot more kind of easier to do as well.
Main thing is broad game plan and be nimble on your feet. Like you have a general idea of what you're doing, you know what everybody does, and then be ready to improvise as your opponent does stuff.
100%. Yeah, I've always found my most enjoyable games to be the ones where I feel like I have the best plan going in because I'm not overthinking in the moment. And then it, like you were saying, Vivek, it opens you up to being more nimble because you have that solid plan to work from. If you have to come up with the plan, it's hard to react to what's going on because you're like, there's too much to process. So
We should pioneer a blitz format, though. We should try that.
So this is probably another topic for another conversation. This kind of really reminds me of the chess theory. So you have like strategy, which is like your overall kind of plan, like your long-term goals. Then you have like tactics, where if your opponent gives you like a blast, or if you kind of sense an opportunity to kind of pounce, like that's something that's not expected, but you can kind of take advantage of in the short term to get quite a big advantage.
yeah, that's very
Which is
true.
different to like the long-term goals about how you're going to score during the turning point. Like, are you going to push? Are you going to try to push for crit up at the cost of kill up, or are you going to play like a longer game? Like it's pretty cool.
Very true. Okay. Any shout outs you guys want to make before we do the next one?
Everybody. I want to shout everybody out. You're all great. You're all aces in my book, okay? Too many people to
can't wait.
name. Everybody too wonderful.
Yeah, I can't wait to get the new tournament season started because we've had a bit of a break here in Ontario, and it'd be nice to catch up with everyone over the summer and see some familiar faces.
I played like 5 games of Kill Team since Edmonton. 2 of them were yesterday.
Yeah, it's nice. It's you have these seasons. We had
Get a break.
little bit of an off season.
It was great. I had a great summer.
Yeah, we had a little bit of an off season, a little refresh, just as we were waiting for the new approved ops to come in. But now, yeah, we're ready to go and can't wait to get some games.
GW gave me my favorite team. Thank you.
I have one shout out in particular. I want to shout out Dave Seafried. He recently set up a YouTube channel called Great Lake Kill Team.
Nice.
We've been uploading. Me and him have been recording our games on TTS, and we've been uploading them there. So if you want to watch some decent quality competitive games, we're pretty casual, but like it's pretty fun. We've got some good matches up there already that everyone can kind of look through. So yeah, it's worth doing.
Everybody go like and subscribe. We need more quality content for the Kill Team community, and George and Dave are wonderful.
It's raw edits, so don't expect it to be super engaging, but if you're a freak who loves Kill Team and wants to see what competitive players, how they practice, and how the games kind of flow at like a decently high tournament level, like it's worth taking a look.
Pay attention to the questions they ask each other. That is where most of that competitive juice is knowing the questions to ask to get the information you need to make an informed decision. That'll be really good for particularly anybody looking to dip into the competitive scene. Just listen to the way they talk to each other and how they give each other information and whatnot. And sort of set that as your bar for like, all right, this is how you sort of operate when you play a game. It is very much a cooperative and competitive thing. Lots of intent, lots of things. Just listen to them, you'll see it. You'll see it flows like a dream.
Yeah, Yeah, you're playing the game with your opponent. Yeah, so if you ever have any questions about TTS or if you want to play us as well, you can join the Great Lakes Kill Team Discord as well. I'm sure Thomas can provide a link for that.
Yeah, I can provide a link to both the Great Lakes Discord and then also the Great Lakes Kill Team YouTube channel. Great Lakes Kill Team. Okay, perfect. I'll put it in the link. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Dude, it's wonderful to chat with you guys.
It's always a good time.
And
it's good fun.
Can't wait to dig into some games and dig into the TAC Ops next time.